Okay, we're going to get started, and we're going to learn a new Inyan today. It's a different part of Kedushin. Till now, we've talked basically about Kedushin, but now the Masech is going to talk about different kinyanim. We're going to talk about Eved Ivri. It's going to go to other types of kinyanim, and there's going to be a whole section about Eved Ivri. Eved Ivri somehow is connected also the kinyan of Eved Ivri because it has also Alma Ivriya. And Alma Ivriya, she could turn into a Kedushin also with Yiyud, and that's part of the sale of Alma Ivriya actually could turn into a marriage. So that's really connected very much to Kedushin. But in general, there's four types of Eved Ivri that we're going to learn about here in the Sugya. There's and the Eved Ivri, we talk about the Jewish person, of course, it was an Eved Ivri. It's four types. One is the one that he stole. He was a Geneva, and he didn't have money to pay for the Geneva. And since he didn't have money to pay for the Geneva, so the Beis Din sells him, and they sell him for 6 years. And that's one type of Eved Ivri. That's Machru Beis Din, it's called, as special halachas. There's another type of Eved Ivri. A person sells himself to be an Eved Ivri. He could sell himself. That's a second type of Eved Ivri. And then there's two departments really of that. There's a person who sells himself to a Jewish person, or this person who sells to a goy. That's two parshas in the Torah. That the Mocher Atzma, the Yisrael, Mocher Atzma Akum. And we have also a case of Alma Ivriya. That Alma Ivriya is a case, of course, of the father sells his young daughter before the age of 12, and those are really the four cases that the Gemara is going to talk about. Mishnah starts talking about case of Eved Ivri. So there's Machru Beis Din, when a person was over on a Geneva and he didn't have money to pay, so Beis Din sells him. And then there's a case he sells himself to a Jew, a case he sells himself to a goy. And then the case of father selling off his young daughter before the age of 12, and he sells her for an Alma Ivriya. Now, the Mishnah is going to start telling us some of those halachas of Eved Ivri, but in order to understand the parshas of Eved Ivri, so we should really learn the psukim. If you have a chumash in front of you, it's better. I wrote it also out on the board over here, on our Zoom board over here, or on our board of what do you call this? The screen in front of us. We have all the psukim of Eved Ivri, and there's actually three different parshas of the Torah that discuss the laws of Eved Ivri. And it's interesting. When I was reading the sugya, I said, they keep, comparing one type of Eved to the other, and where it's learned out from. So in order to learn these halachas, we'll just learn quickly the Mishnah, and after we learn the Mishnah, we'll see the sources in the Torah where all these halachas come from, and there's many different halachas of all these different types. Again, the four types of Eved Ivri, many types of halachas that seem to be some are different, some are the same. As machlokas tanoim, are they the same? Aren't they the same? So it's not really so mufurish in the Torah. What are the halachas of Eved Ivri? And there's three separate parshas in the Torah about Eved Ivri, and we have to understand why the Torah wrote it in three different places, and why was it written in three different places, and what are the halachas in each different place in the Torah, and that's what I like to study today. A little parsha of a little chumash and a little bit of kedushin. So this is a new section of kedushin that we're starting or embarking on a new derech, learning the halachas of Eved Ivri. Maybe we'll get later to the halachas of Kanani, but it's a masechta b'fnei atzma, the halachas of Eved Ivri within the halachas of Maseches Kedushin. It's almost like a masechta b'fnei atzma. I think I saw that Reb Chaim Kanievsky has like a very large sefer on just the halachas of Eved Ivri, even though it's a couple of lot in the Gemara, but he has a massive sefer on these halachas of Eved Ivri. Let's just first learn the Mishnah, and we'll see some of the halachas, and then we'll see where they derive from in the three different places in the Torah. So the Mishnah says, and if you have it in front of you, I don't think I put it on the screen here, but Eved Ivri is nikna b'kesef u'b'shtar. So there's two types of kinyan that we can make an avid ivri for pruta. You can buy an avid ivri, you can buy him for pruta, or you can buy him with a star also. You can buy him either with the star, and the Gemara is going to learn out where you learn out star and kesef. The girls can learn. All these ones are going to have their psukim that tell us you can do these, and they're not so clear. And that's the Gemara is going to show that that in each case where they come from. So two kinyanim, they can buy an avid ivri, kesef star. The koina atzmoi bishonim, so he goes out bishonim. So that usually means in 6 years he goes out, and that's not so simple. That it goes on all types of avodim. So machlokes in the Tanoim, whether that applies also to mocher atzmo. It's only halacha in mochru bezdin. Of course, a girl is sold, it's for sure she's sold for 6 years, and not more. So shonim uvi yovel, and the person goes out in yovel. So that it could be yovel, could be two things. Yovel, we know, of course, is up to 50 years, 49 years. And yovel could be if you're sold only for 6 years. How does yovel get in there? So it could be that you're sold within 6 years of yovel. So in other words, even though you go out in 6 years, but if the yovel comes in before the 6 years, you go out in that case. Or let's say a person who was sold for more than 6 years, that mocher atzmai, sold for 40 years, 30 or whatever, but the yovel takes him out. Bigurayin kesef means that you deduct from the amount that he was purchased for, and well, let's say a 6-year deal for 600, let's say, and he worked already for 4 years. So then you say he worked out 2/3 of the time, and only 1/3 is left. So he could buy his way out, or someone could pay for it, and it could be redeemed. It's called Giroyin Kesef, the deduction of the money that he's already earned as being an evet. Yisera Lav Al Meivriya, the Mishnah says that she has an extra halacha that she also goes out besides the Bishanim Yoibel and Giroyin Kesef, those 3 ways. She also goes out in a 4th way. And that the Torah points out where she can say the Omivriya, she kones atzma b'simonim. So if she becomes a nara, she gets the simonim naras. She also goes out if that's within the 6-year period. So she also goes out as a nara. So that's an additional way that's only by Omivriya, of course, not by Eved Ivri. That doesn't apply, of course. And Eved Ivri is not sold as a cotton. He can't sell himself, but he can't be sold also as from Beis-Din because he's not culpable. So then it says in the Mishnah, the end of the Mishnah, Hanirtza Nikna Bertzia. So that's a person who was also a question in the Gemara. If a nirtza applies only to someone who was sold by the Beis-Din, and he says after he's been there for a while, he says, "Hafti es Adoni vesishti vesbonai." I love my master, my wife, and children, and he wants to stay with that master. So then he has to stay on till Yovel, even though he's supposed to go out in the 6 years. So if he makes this request, and the question when he makes this request, I think he has to be within the 6 years. If he's already afterwards, he can't do it. And then he goes to Yovel. So then it says that he goes. That's a case of Kona by the Ritzia is Kona. It says in the Mishnah that that you have to pierce his ear. Yovel, and he'll go out in Yovel. And when his master dies, he also goes out, and that we'll see how that applies to the other types of avodim that wasn't mentioned before. Seems like other avodim, Stam and Eved is not the nirtza. He won't go out with Mrs. Auden. So those are really
the Misa came before the 6 years.
Yeah, right. So then he goes out with Mrs. Auden, right?
Shaila is whether the children are Yerush.
What?
Shaila is whether the
doesn't
children
go to
will be Yerush the Eved.
Yeah, it doesn't go to Yorish. That's Misada means it doesn't go to Yorish.
I mean, it doesn't go to the Yerush.
Doesn't go to Yorish. That's right.
And so that's even within a 6-year period.
That's right, within 6 years, right? So now we know the halachas of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah taught us really the halachas of Eved Ivri, Omevriya, and the Nirtza. And those are the halachas. Now these halachas, as I said, are it's going to be they're spread out in the Torah. So when I learned the Gemara, I learned it. It said, we're used to learning the Gemara, but sometimes we read the Gemara and then we just see the psukim in the Gemara, and we don't really, especially you learn Daf Yomi, you don't have time to study maybe the psukim, and you look at the Torah, you rely on the limudim. But this Gemara, when I went over it, I said, we got to really see the psukim. because the background for the Eved Ivri is so spread out in the Torah, and all the whole sugya is going to be based on this background. So when we learn the next couple of blat, knowing all these halachas, they're going to come up in the sugya. We should have a background. We're going to use this background throughout the sugya, Mirza Hashem, to know where all these halachas are coming from. And there's going to be, we'll get to the lomdus later, but just knowing that dinim, there's lots and lots of dinim over here that are, that's we have to. But the Yisayid dinim, of course, based on what it says in the Torah. So let's see. There's three parshas. If you have a chumash in front of you, you can open a chumash in Shmos Chaf Aleph. It's a Mishpatim, and I have a chumash in front of me. I also have it on the board, the psukim of Mishpatim, and we're going to try to understand. I looked a little bit in the Meforshim on the chumash, trying to understand why these halachas of Eved Ivri are situated in this place, and why exactly these halachas of Eved Ivri are mentioned in each part of the Torah. So let's first start with Mishpatim. So Ela Mishpatim, Asher Tosim Ifneim. So it starts out the first, talks about Mishpatim. It's a kind of a strange thing. It starts talking about Eved. I remember when I was a kid also, the rabbi was struggling. Every rabbi has to say a drasha on the parsha, and he was trying to figure out how he's going to say a drasha. The first law in the laws of Mishpatim is about avodim. Today in America, talk about avodim. Sounds like a bad thing. Abraham Lincoln came around, he freed all the slaves, and it's a bad thing to talk about avodim. So he was having a very hard time, the rabbi, trying to discuss. That's the first thing you got to know in Mishpatim. But anyway, when we learn the sugya,
here's the good news: as long as it's a Jew who's an Eved, it's fine.
Okay, that's a good philosophy.
Nobody has an issue with it.
Okay, that's a good one. So anyway, so that's a good answer. So we have in the parsha Mishpatim. So why exactly is this halacha of avodim mentioned over here? Why is this the first halacha coming in? So I write down my interpretation, understanding. It's a hemshich. We talked about the Sersa Dibros, and the Sersa Dibros is, of course, ben al mokum ben al chavere. Can't steal, can't take away something. You can't kidnap, can't take away. You can't try to, you can't even covet somebody else's house, his wife, his things. You can't take away things. You have to know what's yours and what's not yours. Because I think I heard Rabbi Feinstein. There was a question in his yeshiva there in the Fairs, with Fairs Shalayim. I know your Shelley is a part of that yeshiva. I know in your youth. So there was mentioned, that some of the people were not so happy that they're starting out learning about Mitzvah over there in Elam Mitzias. Why can't they start out with brachas? That's what they asked Rav Moshe, and he said no. A person, Erlich Yid, has to know what's his and what belongs to somebody else. So he thinks the best thing to start with Elam Mitzias, so some things are yours and something belongs to somebody else. You have to know that a lot of things are not yours. Some people think everything in the world belongs to them. The first yesod of a Yid is to know that some things don't belong to you. So that in the Sersa Dibros, we say don't take away things from other people. So that's really what's going on here at the beginning of Mishpatim.
I heard that story just recently. I forgot who mentioned it. Somebody went, I forgot who he went to. He went to one of the Gdolim, and he said that he has to leave yeshiva. He has to go into the business world. He's upset that he won't be able to continue his learning. He said, "What happened to Choshen Mishpat?"
Yeah,
you'll be able to learn a lot of Choshen Mishpat when you're in the business.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if he really wants to know what he's doing in business, he better know that.
Plenty of learning.
Yeah. Okay, so that's what he's saying now in Mishpatim. So we're talking about in Mishpatim. We're talking about the inyanim of not taking something that doesn't belong to you. And that's really the first parsha. The Machru Bezdin is that's the idea that in Machru Bezdin you can't take away something that a person is over on Geneva, and therefore he doesn't have what to pay. So then he has to he's sold by the Bezdin. He's sold by the Bezdin, and that's the first halacha really. And that's the nignav sheino malashalem, and so he's sold b'gnei basei. Now it's mentioned here that's Machru Bezdin. It's clear it's Machru Bezdin, because it says kisikne Eved Ivri. When you buy an Eved Ivri, so it doesn't say he sold himself. You bought him. You bought him. Bought it means somebody else sold him. Kisikne, you're making a purchase of this. Is a commodity. So this other Jew who is being sold, he's being sold. It's not him selling himself, but he's being sold. There's a moicher, and that's the Bezdin. So then it says in that parsha that just reading some of the parsha reads the smaller letters of the parsha. and the larger letters that I'm commenting on the
So
parsha.
what's the lashon he used for when he sells himself? If he don't sell
It
himself,
says, we'll see that's coming up later. That it says that he himself. It says in the Torah that Kiyamucha Chicha. It says in the later on in the parsha that it says that he's going to sell himself. It's going to say.
so why's that not mechira too?
Well, that is a mechira, but it's a different halachas. When it says that over there that he's going to sell himself, that he's going to say v'nimkar lach, he's going to be sold to you. It's going to be he's going to be, he's poor. He doesn't have money, so he's going to sell himself because he didn't steal, but he doesn't. He needs parnasa, so he needs a lot of parnasa. This is really good, for us. We're in the Corona season. A lot of people they lost parnasa. So in the time of the Torah, they maybe could sell himself for an avid ivri. That's what Torah tells us in the second parsha. But this parsha says that you should take care of this person, even though he stole. You might think guy's a ganav, you think guy's a ganav, stick him in, put him in a jail. But no, but actually there's lots of halachas you got to take care of him and really take care of him in a way that he'll be okay. He has to be kona evan ivri latzma. It's like kona adam latzma. You have to give him. You have one pillow, you got to give it to him. You got one steak, you got to give it to him. There's a lot of things the Torah is makbid. It says over there, that also it says that in the parsha that you have to feed his wife. Okay, so it says that you have to take care of his wife. That's what it says. In V'gapo yovo in Bali shoyu v'yotzi shtoimo. So the Rashi quotes Gemara later on that says, well, what is his wife doing over there? He stole. Well, it says that that they had a wife. You have to take care of the wife, and you take care of her. Torah's makbid that take care of not only him, take care of his family. So as a ganav, not just sticking him away in some jail someplace, but you actually have to. In the Torah's makbid to take care of him and his family later on. You have to return him to his position. Other things. Torah's makbid on his covet later on, even though he stole. And it says over there, but the Adon has a right also to it's a new parsha also mentioned here by Machru Bezdin that if he doesn't have a wife, so it's not good to be without a wife over there. So he should have a wife, but you're allowed to give him, let's say, shifcha kananis. And usually a Jew is not allowed to live with a shifcha kananis.
Only if he's got a wife.
What we're talking about? He doesn't have a wife. So then
if he doesn't have a wife, they don't give him.
Well, maybe
he's got to be married.
Maybe you're right. Maybe he has a wife. So but he gives him. He gives him a wife. And then he gives children from that. That's a shipcha kananis. So really, in a Torah, you're not allowed to live with a shipcha kananis. Only an Evan Ivri is allowed to live with a shipcha kananis. So over here, if he gives her a shipcha kananis, so then those children are born to shipcha kananis belong to the master. They're still. It says in Pasuk that he has children. Then he'll go out because they don't belong to that. He's not really married to the shipcha kananis. So when he goes out, he'll go out without the wife and the children in that case, and not his wife, but the ones who live with him, and those belong really to the Adon. Okay, now that's another halacha mentioned over here in Machru Bezdin that the Torah allows you, and that's a shaila if the master is allowed to live, but that's a machlokes rishonim. The Ritva I think says that he is allowed to live with a shifcha kananis since he's an Eved Ivri. He has a right to live with a shifcha kananis, and the other rishonim say only if the master gives him. And I think Rashi and others learn like that, but otherwise he can't live with shifcha kananis. For sure, a Jew not allowed to live with shifcha kananis. The only question is an Eved Ivri allowed to if he's not given one? That's machlokes Ritva.
So how does he get her? If he's not given, was he take her? He forces her?
If I guess, and let's say forces her, but she's masking, but not that the master didn't give him, but he's allowed to live with her. He's no Isser. So it doesn't say he can force her, it doesn't say. So now it says over there that he stays, okay, here it says Ritzia, also is another halacha mentioned in the Parsha, that we'll see why Dafka Ritzia is mentioned here by Machul Bezdin. So it says that if he wants to stay with the master, and it looks like he's taking good care of him. Here's a guy who stole. A guy stole. You say you put him away in prison. You're not to be too happy. It's not a happy situation. But here the Torah takes a ganav who didn't have money to pay back. They take care of him. They'll take care of him. They'll take care of him. They'll take care of his wife. and not only that, but he takes such good care of him. He gives him even things that he can't take himself. He's not so rich. He gives him, he only has one pillow, gives it to him, a steak, he gives it to him. And the guy, in this case, may end up liking him so much he wants to stay on. I don't want to leave so fast. Torah writes that he'll even ask to stay on, for till Yovel. Maybe you want to stay another, 43 years or whatever. So it says the Kodem Mechira as Bestin, the Ganav, Akshav. Okay, now the question is like this. In that parsha, it's talking about, again, about the Mechur Besdin. And then looking in the Pasuk also, we saw Ritzia in that parsha. And then right away in the next Pasuk, if you look in the Pasuk in the Torah, it talks about the case of the Omo Ivriya. Now what is that? How does that get in there? So so funny. Here we mentioned that maybe in Mishpatim, we want to talk about, don't steal other people's property. If you do that, you can be sold as an Eved. And all of a sudden, we're talking about a girl who, according to the Torah, she's a Ktana, and she wasn't stealing anything, and she's sold by her father. She's sold by her father. So it's why is that stuck in this parsha? Here in Mishpatim, all of a sudden, we have, all right, the halachas, maybe it's got to do with Geneva, got to do with stealing people's property. And here we have a halacha that a man could sell his daughter for Alma, and she doesn't go out and say, I don't think it's mentioned in Gemara. It means that she doesn't go up a Shem Ba'ayin, doesn't go like Avodim Kanani, will go up a Shem Ba'ayin. But she does go out in the other Kinyanim we saw in the Mishnah. She goes up, Sheish, Yovel, and she goes out, even goes out more. She goes out with Simanim. So what does it mean over here? Why is this put in the Parsha? And why is this put in the Parsha? So I understood, again, this Parsha is talking about somebody else doing it to the other person. Because again, later on in the Torah, we're going to talk about the Parsha about people selling themselves, either to a Jew or to a non-Jew. But here, the Torah is talking about somebody else selling another person. So we talk about Beis Din selling Ganav. And here talking about the father taking care of the girl. Now, I think, and also, I remember learning this years ago, that father's not really allowed to sell a daughter unless he really can't take care of her. A father who could support his family, take care of the daughter, he shouldn't be selling her. I think I saw that in maybe Shainim, that, it's a person, let's say, basically, it's not a good thing to sell off a daughter, but we're talking about a guy who maybe can't support it, can't take care of her. So here she's taken into another person's house, and this other person could actually marry her. It's all Shaila. The Gemara, maybe he has to pay any extra money. Maybe the money that he paid for the Kinyan Yiyud could go for the Kedushin. So it's really sort of a marriage. It's sort of like a shidduch deal over here. So he takes this young girl who, by the time that she gets to be 12 years old, she's going to go out. So she's going to decide whether he wants to marry her or not. And there's going to be a skoma on the marriage. So then, if she's not, doesn't like it, or he don't like her, she don't like it, I think as we discussed in the sugya, then she don't have to get married to him. But it was sort of like a shidduch deal. So, and it wasn't just every father could just sell off his daughter. It was his father, basically, according to Rishonim that I remember, was that they really couldn't support him. And then it was like, sort of like giving over to what do you call it? Maybe like sort of like adoption, or what do you call it? Maybe foster home or something like that. But she had also the ability, this poor girl, to go to a person who might marry her, and then of course they're going to arrange. They like the marriage; it works out. Then it says in that pasuk, so it says once. That's the halacha pigeon. We're going to learn that out that we learned in the Mishnah, that the Gerayin Kesef. Actually, the whole halacha of Gerayin Kesef is learned from this pasuk over here, which is written by Omo Ivriya. So it says that it didn't work out, whatever. The master didn't want to marry her, didn't want to yiyud, is the type of kedushin. We had that lashon in kedushin also to miyayid, to designate. And it didn't work out. Let's say that they want to marry, or she didn't want, father didn't want, somebody didn't want the marriage over here. And then, so then she gets hefta. The Gemara says the binyan doesn't say v'nif that should be redeemed, but it means v'hefta means that he has to also participate in the pigeon. That's what the Gemara calls it girayin kesef. That's how the Gemara learns out v'hefta, that not only does that the person has the girl, or I guess the father, redeems them with money, but it's also that the master has to like take off from the price. He's also going into the deal, taking off. That's because we say whatever she was purchased for was purchased for 600 for 6 years, so it's really like 100 per year, and so he has to take off the amount of years that she worked for him, and that is behafta. They both participate, and that's the first parsha in the Torah that was in Parshas Mishpatim. We go on in the Torah in Parshas. Okay, that's the next one is and Vayikra Chofei. Okay, then we have a Bahar over there. Bahar. So we have also this talk about Mocher Atzmo. This talk about Mocher Atzmo. Again, Mocher Atzmo has two types of Mocher Atzmo. There's Mocher Atzmo to a Jew. There's Mocher Atzmo to a Goy, and even to a Avodah Zarah. As mentioned, I think by Rashi, that doesn't mean he's actually working for Avodah Zarah that he can't do, but he like works in the in the Avodah Zarah place. Now he's not doing Avodah Zarah, but let's say he has some kind of a job there. He's a shamash in the Avodah Zarah place, but he's not actually doing Avodah Zarah. But it's certainly not a very mechubadik deal over here. The Torah. So this is a guy, but you're not. Beis Din is not going to sell him to the guy. It's not a question of Beis Din selling him. This is a mocher atzmo. Now, if you look in the Torah in Bahar, it's interesting. What is this got to do with Bahar, and why is this left off? It's not. Why is this a whole different parsha? Why is this not in the original parsha about the cases of Evet Ivri that we spoke about before? Because looking in the parsha Bahar, it's very. There's later on the Gemara actually in Kedusha is going to talk about Daf Chof. It's going to talk about all these psukim over here. You're studying it. It's going into the Inyan. Of course, Bahar we know is Shemitah. Shemitah. That's the that says Manya Shemitah Sar Sinai. That's the beginning of the parsha. Bahar talks about Shemitah. And Shemitah is the Inyan of Emunah and Bitachon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We believe God says He promises us if we don't work the field, He'll take care of us. And then you're not supposed to Zriya and Ksira and the other malachas, the 4 malachas of Shemitah, don't work it. And then you're not supposed to make sale of the property during the Shemitah. You have to make it hefker. You have to have bitachon. Everything is hefker. Give it over. And then you ask Manocha b'shana what I'm going to eat. Well, don't worry about it. Hashem promises that you'll have plenty. That's a special haftacha for the Shemitah in Eretz Yisrael, and that's the parsha of Shemitah. But then it goes on and on, saying that a whole bunch of things about you're going to sell your property, you're going to sell your goods, you're going to sell your field, you're going to sell all kinds of things over there. And why is it going on about those things about sale? So it's mentioned in Gemara later on in Kedushin. It says that the reason for all this is we're talking about somebody who doesn't follow the Shemitah. He sells Perish Shvias. In Shvias, he doesn't follow what the Torah says, that you're not supposed to do business with the Perish Shvias, supposed to be Hefker, and he doesn't follow the laws. He doesn't really have bitachon, and because he doesn't have bitachon, he doesn't think Hashem will take care of him. Well, Hashem takes care of him the opposite way. He starts losing things. He has to sell his goods. He starts selling his metaltalin. Starts selling his karka, and eventually he's going to sell himself. That's what it says in the end over there. That's what's coming up here now. So that's in the end. So it's all of a person who's not following the halachas of the Shemitah, and not following. He doesn't have bitachon, and he goes on, and he's going to. The Torah says, well, you're not going to follow the Shemitah and have Amunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to end up selling even yourself, and even selling yourself to a goy. That's parsha. This is the new parsha of the Torah. So this has to do with the parsha Bahar, because Bahar, as he says, Amunah. Manya Shemitah is our Sinai. The whole Torah was given at Sinai, and that's the union of again bitachon and Amunah. And the Torah goes on and on here about explaining what's going to happen if you don't have the bitachon, and Hashem's going to say, well, you're going to lose everything. And so it says psukim now. I'm reading it. So you have to take care of him, even though he became poor. Still is a mitzvah to take care of him, and the guy's he's what do you call a misfortunate guy. He'll borrow money, even he'll pay ribbis, he'll do whatever. No. I'll take Yachimeno the neshek for tarbis. Don't take any ribbits from the guy. It's a mitzvah to take care of a guy. Well, I can't take care of all these guys. Well, and so even though maybe they did sin, they're sinners. Why should I take care? No. Torah takes care of even people who are sinners. As we saw, the Torah took care of them in the parsha we saw before in Mishpatim. It takes care of the one who steals. The Torah takes care of these guys who didn't take care of Shemitah. The Torah takes care of them, and there's a mitzvah of lending them money, don't take rivers. Amidst of supporting them, you got to take care of them, and you have to take care of them. They make care of a covet. He doesn't, even though he's a miskin, he doesn't have, he doesn't have any money on his own. Still, lend him money, and don't. Oh, well, the guy said, "Well, why should I lend the guy money?" It's almost I'm lending this poor guy money. He's not a good businessman. He lost his own money, lost everything. Why should I lend this guy money? And even before Shemitah, it says before Shemitah, lend him money. We said, why should I lend money before Shemitah? Shemitah is Mashamet the Chov. He's not going to pay me back. No, the Torah says, even though it's right before Shemitah, you still should have been talking again. You should be talking about Shalom. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Well, why don't worry? And say, a year before Shemitah, this guy has no money. No, don't worry. The Torah says, don't worry. Don't worry. Okay. So that's the Torah tells me. Again, it's all in Yonim of you have to be talking. So so he sells himself. Now he sells himself. He needs a job, so he sells himself for an ebed. And it says, well, he sells himself ebed. So even though this guy, he'll do any job for you. This guy needs a job. He lost his work. He lost his house. He lost his field. There was what do you call it now? Foreclosure on his property. The guy has nothing. He'll take any job. He'll work for you minimum wages. I know with minimum wages today, he'll take less than minimum wage. No. Don't give him a job about his ebed or porach. Don't give him these real hard jobs you don't need. Don't give him a job that Rashi says in Gemara later that you don't give him a job. You tell him to warm up the a tea. You don't even want to drink it. No. And treat him honorably. Treat him honorably. It's a Jew. You got to take care of him. That's again. So and then well, don't worry. Shemitah is coming. Why shall I come? No. Don't worry about it. Now there's a question in the Gemara here also. It says that in Pogoboy Yovel Lifnei Sheish, Rashi says in the pasuk again. So here in the Torah, again, this is Mocher Atzmo. We pointed out in the original parsha of Machur Besdin, it says explicitly in the Torah, Machur Besdin is for 6 years. The girl also, when she's sold by her father, it's for 6 years. Mocher Atzmo, it does not say in the Torah you're sold for 6 years. It does not say that. And in fact, the Chachamim and the Gemara say that there is no halacha of Mocher Atzmo for 6 years. You could sell for 6 years, but there's no requirement to sell for 6 years. You can sell to Yovel. That's the Chachamim's opinion in the Gemara. We'll see that next time later on in this daf that you could sell. There's no din of Sheish Shanim, only applies Mocher Besdin and Omoivriya. Does not apply to Mocher Atzmo. You could sell as much as you want. You can sell until Yovel. And here Rashi points out is in the pasuk with interesting Rashi here in Chumash in Parshas with Parshas Bahar. So it says in that pasuk that I'm just quoting the pasuk here. It says that in the Torah it says that he goes out in Yovel. They goes out in Yovel. Achnasa Yovel yabot imach kesocher kesoshav yeimach achnasa Yovel. So she worked to Yovel. This is a person selling at Yovel. So Rashi, interesting in Chumash, Rashi says he sold to Yovel if the Yovel comes before 6 years. That's what Rashi says. Rashi points that out in Chumash. He says if he sold to Yovel, well, how did he get to Yovel? So Rashi said, well, if the Yovel came within the 6 years, that's what Rashi says.
So that means that's it. In the beginning, they say, all right, you're sold for 4 years instead of 6.
Well,
or is it a 6-year price and a 4-year discount?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So what are you selling him for? He knows he's only going to go for 4 years, right? So he would probably only pay for 4 years. He knows he's only going to go to Yovel. So a guy's going to pay only 4 years. That's right. So he's not going to pay. A guy knows it's like a rental. A guy knows he's only getting it for 4 years. He wouldn't pay for 6 years. Only pay 4. So now the question is, Rashi added though. Rashi says that he goes out in Yovel if the Yovel came within the 6 years. Now that is only according to Rebbe Lezer in the Gemara. So there's machlokus in the Gemara. I said Tanakama Rebbe Lezer. I would believe the halacha is probably like the Tanakama. I would think we'll have to see in Rambam. I'm missing that chelik in Rambam. I have in Kenyan. I couldn't find it here. The Franco Rambam on Kenyan. So I was looking for it before Shabbos. I couldn't find. I have the other Rambam, but my Franco Rambam I was missing at Kenyan. So I sent off a message to Kesher Stam to get me a Kenyan Rambam Franco. So I need that right now. But
that sounds like something very ironic. You don't have a Kenyan on the Rambam.
Yeah,
Rambam
right.
Kenyan.
Right. Very good. Moshe's Tide is good. Taina. I have no Kenyan on the Rambam, which is true. You got to work hard to get a Kenyan on the Rambam. So
you have to be kind of the Rambam.
Right, got to be kind of right. There was a story I heard once about Telz Yeshiva in Cleveland. There was 3 big bochrim and they were learning in the yeshiva, and they were learning. And they left Seder. They left for about a half hour, and then they came back. They came back like a half hour later, and then the mashgiach said, "Where were you guys?" Oh, we had to bring a ktsais. We had to bring the ktsais. So in Yiddish, a shver means either difficult or heavy. So the mashgiach said, "Oh, that must have been muzayin as shver ktsais." Took you a half hour, three guys to leave the base medrash. Zazah shver ktsais. He said, anyway, so that was, he said the same thing here. Moshe's timing that I am missing Kenyan, so I'm hoping that later today maybe I'll pick up my Kenyan on the Rambam. At least we'll have that for next week. If I may have left in the shiva. I don't know. Anyway, but it says over here in the halacha, it says here in the halacha that we're discussing here. The Rashi pointed out that if the Yovel came within the 6 years, so that's according to Rebbe Lezer, who you sell yourself also for 6 years. But the Chachamim say you could sell, for 50 years, and that Yovel could have come in later. So it's interesting why Rashi mentioned that. I'm not sure why Rashi mentioned that. That's Rashi holds the halacha is like Rebbe Lezer. I don't know, perhaps. Then it says Kisocher Ketoshav Yeimach. So what is it telling us? Well, why is it telling all of a sudden? This is telling this he's telling Kisocher, he's working for you. He's a socher. He's a person who works. He's a handyman. He does something in your house. He fixes things. He does things. So he does this. Why is it telling us this all of a sudden? That you should take. Well, the point is that we say you got to take care of this guy. You don't treat him bad. Treat him good. You gotta make sure that everything is supplied to him, and don't treat him like an eved. Lo sabah about a eved. Lo zero perach. Well, why not? The guy, he's an eved. The guy, no. He's like a regular guy. You looked it up on the in Achenu. You're looking for a handyman. You took a handyman. Not that you're taking a guy who was penniless and he lost his job during the corona. No. You have to realize that this guy is a regular worker, and you got to take care of him in a normal way, with a mechubedika way. So again, the Torah is makbid on all these different people. People who were penniless, people who even stole. Torah is very makbid on taking care of their covet, and not only that, it says you take care of them. In other words, once he finishes his term of 6 years or whatever, he goes back to his position he had before. You don't say, well, he lost it. No. He can go back right to whatever his family position was, and as a chuzah, whatever, he goes back to that, and he gets back to his regular status. And then, well, how can I do? No, you should remember, you're avodim. You are also avodim. Don't you should have a feeling about, I think Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says in the Shmuzin, that when they left Mitzrayim, they were commanded this halacha about avodim, because he says then they knew what an eved was. Later on, if you tell them this mitzvah avodim, they would say, "Come on, I can't take care of these guys. I'm not these freeloaders. I'm not taking care of." No. When they were leaving Mitzrayim, they knew what an eved was, and the guy should realize is the guy doesn't feel so good about himself when he's an eved. He feels pretty down. So that's why the mitzvah. That's what Chaim Shmulevitz points out. That's why his point. That was why the Torah Dafka, commanded the mitzvah of avodim as they were leaving Mitzrayim, even though they weren't commanded the Torah mitzvahs till later on. And that's mocher atzmo to a Jew, and then it says also mocher eker the ger the taishav. So again, it says it even can be sold even to a goy, and even to a zora, not mamish of a zora. We pointed out, but it meant like works for the church or something like that. Not doing it with a zora. I said so. Now it says over there, chisasig yad ger v'toshav imach umach achicha imay. So the ger, it's talking about a ger toshav, a regular ger, or a toshav. And Rashi says he keeps signing mitzvahs noach. So that he's living with you. Why did he become rich? Because he was living with the Jews. He was living in a neighborhood with the Jews. The Jews were giving good business advice. The guy, he got rich. This guy, so he was able to buy a avodim. So that's because he was living with Jews. He got, as Rashi says, he got good ideas, and he bought some Jews. He bought some avodim. And then another Jew though got poor, and Rashi says he got poor because he's sticking on with the goyim. So the goyim got rich because they were sticking with the Jews, and the Jew got poor because he was sticking with the goyim. He was following their minhagim. Okay, well the acre mishpachas. Okay, so Rashi says acre. That's avodah zarah over there. So then achar nimka gulati aloi echad me'achav yigalenu. You try to get this guy out of that. You don't have to stay by the goyim. You should. And the parsha, it's a whole parsha about redeeming him. So here's mentioned in the redemption parsha about relatives, Dodo, Ben Dodo. That parsha is not mentioned in the other cases about redemption of a relative redeeming. That's not mentioned by Merchul Bezdin. It's also not mentioned Mocher Atzma to Yisrael. it's mentioned over here by a goy. We don't want him to stay by goyim. In other words, like see me the other places. Maybe we're not interested in having redemption. They should work for it. He was supposed to work for the Jew. He's machru bezdin. He's got a sentence. Shouldn't be, maybe you're not to other relatives to redeem him. But here we don't want him to stay by the goyim. So it says Dodo, Ben Dodo, his uncles, cousins, they should try to get him out of there. And then if they can do it, they can do it. Otherwise, he doesn't have a relative who can do it. Maybe himself will be able to get him out there. Okay, and then it says that here in Parsha, it finishes it up. He makes the cheshbon, how much he was bought for, everything. And it says at the end, you may sucher. Again, here use the word sucher. You may sucher. So he should be like a worker, a regular worker by him. So that's the second Parsha. And then it says, just one thing, Len, the Parsha that said over there, a lot of years are left. Yoshib Gulasa Mikesa Miknasa. That's very important words here because the Torah Gemara is going to make a whole big deal out of it. The word Mikesa Miknasa. So he has to, when he gets out, he has to redeem himself from that money that he was originally purchased from. That's where the whole source of knowing that Eved is purchased with money is from this pasuk Mikesa Miknasa. And it's written over here it's really only written by the Jew who sold to the guy, but the Gemara is going to see how that's going to be learned out in all the other avodim also from that one limud, which is really funny. It's written only there, and all the other avodim are going to. So we have a new parsha here about selling yourself. Doesn't mention 6 years. Doesn't mention anything about nirtza. It doesn't say anything about giving over the ivri. A lot of things are not mentioned, and that's a lot. That's why the chachamim say they do not apply to mocher atzma. They only apply to machru bezdin. Those halachas about nirtza and giving over a ivriya, giving over a shifcha to live with you. Those are only by machru bezdin. And here it says in this parsha that he says we sold to a guy that again here it says kesef nasa from the money was purchased from, and that also is only written here by the sold to a guy, and somehow we'll see the Gemara is going to learn out from there to all the other avodim, but the other halachas they don't learn out. We'll have to see why not. And it's again they're using this parsha of Jews selling to a guy that he's bought also for money. Again, so all the avodim are bought for money. It's all learned out from this one parsha of the Jew sold to selling himself to the guy, and yet the other halachas that are what you find over there, we're not going to compare all the halachas, to Jew selling to the guy, and what about? Well, we'll see. Well, why not? We'll say about redemption of the other relatives, and so we're not. We're going to some halachas are learned out from the other, some are not. Now the last parsha is here in we said in Devarim Tesvav. Okay, now it talks about in Re'eh. You have a chumash, Parshas Re'eh. Really, it's interesting. Re'eh. Many times when I studied this parsha of Re'eh, it talks about being happy and korbanos and eating korban. A person's happy if he brings a korban. He feels like Hashem is with him. He's bringing korbanos. He's enjoying whatever God gave him the money. He can celebrate, make korbanos, bring it to. A lot of times simcha is mentioned in Re'eh. A lot of simcha. It's interesting. The Parsha of Re'eh, which talks about simcha, also talks about giving. It's a lot of matanas, ma'aser sheni, and other matanas, shmita. You got to give it mafker your field, and give a lot of presents. Are talking about over there in the Parsha aser ta'aser. Give meiser, and they give meiser, of course, meiser rishon to a Levi. And talk about Meiser Sheni, which Meiser Sheni mentioned. Meiser, of course, yours, but much of Meiser Sheni is mentioned, I think, by the Rishonim, is given away because a person lived in Israel, different parts of Israel. He had 1/10 of his produce. He can only spend it in Yerushalayim. Now, a person usually didn't spend, 1/10 of his year in Yerushalayim. He lived in Tiberia. He came down there for a couple of weeks a year in Pesach and Sukkot. So he didn't spend, weeks and weeks in Yerushalayim. So most of the Meiser Sheni he had to give away. He gave away to Talmidei Chachamim. He gave away to other people, poor people. So it was really his Meiser. That's like the Meiser Rishon he gave to a Levi, and Levi was people learning. It was like Kolel, and the Meiser Sheni was given to other people who lived in Yerushalayim, poor people, other people who needed, So you bought goods, food, and all that, and there was no refrigeration. So most of the stuff you bought was given, and you can't take it out of Yerushalayim even. So Meiser says a lot of the whole parsha of Re'eh really is happiness. I think happiness is giving. People think happiness is receiving. No, but it seems like from the parsha the Indian of Simcha, and Torah in Ray keeps talking about Simcha, Simcha, Simcha all the time. It seems that it's talking a lot about the sinas, as I saw in the parsha. Meister Sheni, mitzvah tzedakah. It says that you should give tzedakah. That you should give him what do you call it? The day extra asher yachsalo. It says in the parsha over there. For a person, he lost something. It says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says in the Shmuzin. It says that the guy used to have a caller in front of him. He was riding on his fancy car, and he had a driver, and he says the guy's running in front of him. He's a sus in front of him, and the guy's he says he has to give him that covet. Now he became poor. You got to give him back because otherwise he'll feel very down. He lost what he had.
He quotes the Gemara by Hillel. Hillel ran in front of the.
Yeah, right. Brings the Gemara, right? Brings right. Yeah. He said a nasi, right?
Even a nasi who's not allowed to be moichel as covered. So Hillel ran in front of the.
Yeah, right. He said very good. Chaim Shmulevitz brings in that.
That's the raya he brought. Yeah.
Yeah, very good raya. He brings it good. Ramesha says the raya for Rabbi Chaim Zimmerman brought that even a nasi who's not supposed to be mochel as covered. But it says he can run in front of a poor person because they must say, so why can he do that? He's not allowed to mochas covet. He says because covet is the Indian of nefashos. That's Rav Chiddush. He says because it feels so badly, it's almost suicidal. The guy who lost it. So that the parsha here in Re'eh is talking about taking care of a person, taking care of all his needs, and there it mentions also over here. So what does it got to do with the Eved Ivri? What's the got to do with Ivri? So that's interesting. You look in the parsha. So we have here right away in the parsha. I'm looking at the psukim over here. It has the pasuk of giving him Hanukkah, giving him when he leaves. You got to give him a present. Hanik tanik loy. That's this is the pasuk. Hanik tanik loy. In other words, the guy who was working for you. This is talking about again. It's machru based in the question of other also Hanukkah. It's also machlokus tanoim. So again, the giving. So you're talking about giving to these tzedakah and giving to people who are not fortunate, whatever. So then it says also this Ebed Ivri who was Machru Bezdin. So it talks about Hanukkah giving. It's
a severance package we call it.
What?
We call it a severance package.
Severance package. So you got to give them all these things over there. So again, so the Torah is worried again. So it's interesting. Why did this get into Re'eh? So again, because Re'eh has to talk about matanas, giving matanas. Real simcha is a person when you're able to give. If a person, sometimes the guy says, I gave so much tzedakah. Yeah, it's true, but you should be happy you're able to give tzedakah, rather give than to take. It's a person, you don't have, so he has to take. But if you're able to give, you should give simcha. And that's what the Torah seems to be teaching us, that here you have the Ebed Ivri who doesn't have anything, and you should be giving him Hanukkah. Give him, the Torah, the Gemara is going to go into the whole sugya, how much every person has to give and what types of goods. So that's this parsha. So the interesting thing there, it says over there, looking in the parsha about the Hanukkah, but it says also, it brings in also about a very strange thing in that parsha that talks about Hanukkah. If I can find it over there. It says that it says the Afla Mosca. If you look in the later on in the parsha in Re'eh, it's an empiric test. I think it's Tesvav. Then it talks about Tesvav. Also talks about Vafla Moscha Tasa came. That's in the Pasuk Zion. Very strange in that parsha. So until now, I think we were explaining it good, and I understood now Hanukkah because we're talking about all the presents of Re'eh, giving presents, giving tzedakah, and that's being taking care of people. And you shouldn't complain. The Torah says, remember, you were in Eved Mitzrayim. Again, the same feeling Rav Chaim Shmulevitz pointed out, that you think, well, why am I giving this guy so many presents? You work for me, get him out of here. He goes, no, you got like a severance package. You give him, he worked for you. Guy works for you, take care of him. So, and remember, you were also about him, and you felt good when you left Mitzrayim. Rashi says, Hashem took good care of you when you left Mitzrayim. He paid you, gave you all the, you went out in the Gula, you had all kinds of goods, you're not supposed to Mitzrayim, he took everything out, right? Remember that, so you should remember this, take care of them. Now, then it says over there that, again, maybe it seems that it repeats it again, the Lo say Mimach doesn't want to leave you. Again, it seems like he's doing such good care of him. I think the same idea we had said before, that you take such good care of the Eved, you give him such good treatment. Don't want to leave you. He sees it. You're giving him a new car or something like that. It's interesting. I just heard last week, Rabbi Kellemer, we passed away. The rabbi from, West Hempstead, it was our relative, Mrs. Small's brother-in-law, big tzaddik. So they gave him a car. The shul bought him a car, and he returned it. He returned the car. When they asked why did he return the car, so somebody mentioned, I think that was in Hesped, they said because a lot of people said in my shul they can't maybe afford a new car. And if the rabbi gets a new car, they'll really feel bad about it. Why should the rabbi have a better car than they got? So he gave it back to the shul. He wouldn't take it. That's just, it'll make him feel bad. So here he says that
I don't know if you saw the story. I'll send it to you. You know the story of this guy in Toronto?
Yeah.
There's a guy in Toronto that his wife, he was a member of the shul, but his wife was sitting shiva in Toronto. So he asked Rav Kellerman not to come because he knew he would drive all the way from West Hempstead to Toronto.
Wow.
But he couldn't stop him. When he got to the Canadian border by Niagara Falls, right, they told him he didn't have his passport. So he said, showed him a letter that he has to be Menachem Avil. So they said, Rabbi, you could come in, but that car cannot come into Canada. It was so beat up. Canada has a rule that you can't have an eyesore of a car in the street.
Wow.
They don't allow it. In Toronto, they give you a ticket. They tell you have to tow it away. So they said the car stays on that side and you could come into Canada.
Wow.
So he took a bus all the way to Toronto.
Wow.
Right? So the interesting thing is on the way back, he went back and he got there right before Shabbos in West Hempstead. And the only reason he got there that close to Shabbos, he stopped in Manhattan to visit somebody in a hospital that he found out was sick.
Wow.
And he made it right before Shabbos to West Hempstead. I'll send you the story. The guy says the story.
Wow. Well, send me that story. He was a great tzaddik. We loved him very much. And we haven't been able to reach his Rebbetzin yet because, during the Shiva, there were so many people. We didn't reach her. We wanted to tell you. That's a beautiful story. You send it to me. Great man. So here, that's finishing up. The end of it is very difficult. Why is she mentioned over here? That bothered me in this end of the Parsha. Why is she mentioned? Because actually, if you look in the Rashi and the Gemara, she doesn't have the same halachas as the man over there. Because the previous pasuk was talking about nirtza. She's not nirtzas. She doesn't get a ritzua. She doesn't get it. The Alma Bria doesn't become a nirtzas. We mentioned that before. So why is she mentioned? So he said what goes on the other things. She gets Hanukkah. And also it's taken care of. I think the other thing it says, what was the other thing in the parsha that I think something else. I think two things from Chodesh. It says in the Rashi brings why this parsha was said over here. Two Chedushim. Rashi says Hanukkah and by Muchel and Bestin, and also by Alma. That Alma, it goes out in 6. She's brought in here, but she gets the same halacha. She goes out in 6 because it wasn't really explicit in the Torah that she goes out in 6. So all of a sudden that's stuck in over here. So we have to discuss that next week, maybe why that is. And we got a little hakdama in the Indian of Avodim. It's a beautiful Indian. It's almost a Masechta B'fnei Atzma. We just started now the sugya, and it's a very, very beautiful sugya. And I'd like to go into this and see, we'll learn the Gemaras and Rishonim and try as much as we can. I don't know if we'll get to Abed Ivri. After Abed Ivri, we can get the Abed Kanani. But this is almost like a Masechta B'fnei Atzma. Those who are learning Daf Yomi, they said the second part of the Kochim. Some used to say it was Psachim Aleph and Psachim Beis. So I think this is a Kedushin base.
Tomorrow they start with that.
Yeah, you're starting with a new Masechta. So now today we started a new Masechta in Kedushin, Shelley, so you can enjoy that, hopefully. All right, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
By the way, Avram, I sent it to your WhatsApp with me.
Okay, you sent it to me. Very good. Thanks very much.
Right.
I want to see that story. Very beautiful.
On a video, and it was on a WhatsApp, so it's easier for me to send it to you through the WhatsApp.
Okay, you got on WhatsApp. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
Not
you
the sheer one, your personal one.
Very good. Thank you so much.